military establishments are composed of flesh and blood. We seem to forget that, particularly in the United States. We tend to think in terms of technology and money. We lose sight of the human factor.
That's also the cultural factor.
Yes, and with the human factor comes everything. You know, the history, the culture, the experience, all of those things are brought to bear on a military establishment in the event of a conflict or a war. And right now, what's happening in Ukraine, eastern Ukraine primarily, is not really well understood in the West. Putin, sees this particular conflict as an existential conflict for Russia. When the Russian forces first entered eastern Ukraine, they encountered lots of Russians. Obviously, the people there were Russian. And they said, well, thank God you've come. And then the people said, well, what are you going to do? Well, we're just here to, push the Ukrainians back and then get a deal. And then we'll leave. And the Russian people there said, if you're going to leave, then the Ukrainian secret police will come back and put bullets in all of our heads. Literally, these conversations were held. This was reported back to Putin. This is where Putin begins to realize he's dealing with a different animal.
Welcome to our channel. Today, we dive into the turbulent waters of Ukraine's ongoing conflict. From military crackdowns to political purges, the situation is spiraling out of control. As Colonel Douglas Macgregor has often pointed out, the instability within Ukraine is a critical concern. Stay with us as we unravel the chaos gripping this nation. First, let's address the severe military crackdown in Ukraine, a situation that Mr. Colonel has repeatedly criticized. Reports indicate that up to 5,000 soldiers are being recruited daily, thanks to aggressive conscription measures. These numbers, though impressive, are likely exaggerated and unsustainable in the long run. But even if true, the daily loss of 2,000 soldiers still gives Ukraine a surplus of 3,000, enabling them to amass forces for a significant counteroffensive. This frantic recruitment drive isn't just about numbers, it's a desperate attempt to prepare for a large-scale offensive. But the human cost is staggering. Arrests and forced conscriptions are rampant, turning every young man into a potential soldier overnight. These aggressive conscription tactics reflect the desperation within the Ukrainian military hierarchy. As resources dwindle and the pressure mounts, the government resorts to increasingly draconian measures to fill its ranks. The impact on morale and the social fabric is profound, with families torn apart and communities living in fear. Moreover, the rapid recruitment and minimal training raise serious questions about the effectiveness of these new soldiers. With only a few weeks to prepare, these recruits are thrust into the front lines, ill-equipped and inexperienced. The likelihood of them sustaining heavy losses in combat is alarmingly high. Moving to the upper echelons of the military, we witness a political bloodbath. A prominent general recently criticized Syrskyi, the chief of general staff, accusing him of indirectly causing massive troop losses. This dissent was quickly silenced when President Zelensky fired the critic, replacing him with a lesser-known brigadier. Such purges highlight the fragile state of Ukraine's military leadership. The leadership shakeup within the military reflects deeper issues. As dissent grows, the stability of Ukraine's military command structure comes into question. This turbulence at the top is mirrored on the ground, where confusion and lack of clear directives undermine the effectiveness of operations. These internal conflicts erode trust and cohesion within the ranks. When high-ranking officials are publicly criticized and swiftly removed, it sends a message of insecurity and volatility. The soldiers on the ground, already facing the horrors of war, must now also navigate the uncertainty of shifting leadership. The rapid turnover of military leaders also impacts strategic planning and execution. New leaders may lack the experience or understanding of ongoing operations, leading to miscommunications and strategic blunders. This constant upheaval creates a disjointed and ineffective command structure, detrimental to Ukraine's military efforts. On the front lines, the situation remains dire. As Colonel Douglas has noted, the chaos on the ground mirrors the instability in leadership. In Kharkiv and Chernihiv, numerous units are defying orders, refusing to engage in combat. Some troops have even deserted, taking their weapons with them. In Kharkiv, the reluctance to fight has left strategic positions vulnerable. This defiance on the ground speaks volumes about the declining morale among Ukrainian forces. With soldiers unwilling to fight and desertions on the rise, Ukraine's ability to mount a successful defense, let alone an offensive, is in serious doubt. The refusal to engage in combat is not just an isolated issue. It reflects widespread dissatisfaction and fear among the troops. Reports from the front lines indicate that entire units have abandoned their posts, leaving critical areas undefended. The psychological toll of continuous warfare, compounded by inadequate support and leadership, is driving soldiers to desperate measures. In Chernihiv, similar patterns emerge. Soldiers are either refusing orders or only accepting defensive assignments, refusing to advance. This hesitance cripples Ukraine's strategic capabilities, leaving them unable to reclaim lost territories or launch effective counter-offensives. The implications of these developments are profound. As the Ukrainian military struggles with internal dissent and desertions, their ability to coordinate and execute complex operations is severely compromised. This ongoing instability could very well tip the scales in favor of the opposition, making it increasingly challenging for Ukraine to sustain its defense. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis at Ukraine's borders is worsening. Reports of civilians attempting to flee conscription, only to be betrayed and captured, paint a grim picture. In one instance, a convoy of 50 people was intercepted while trying to escape, with some reportedly paying up to $20,000 for their doomed attempt. This cycle of exploitation and betrayal highlights the corruption and desperation permeating Ukrainian society. The military-industrial complex profits while ordinary citizens pay the price, often with their lives. The so-called escape routes are nothing but traps set by those looking to make a quick profit. The staggering amounts paid by desperate civilians underscore the dire situation. Families are willing to part with their life savings to avoid conscription, only to find themselves betrayed and handed over to authorities. This tragic cycle of hope and betrayal reveals the deep rot within the system. The human cost of this crisis is immense. The intercepted convoys are just the tip of the iceberg. Thousands more live in constant fear, hiding from authorities and unscrupulous traffickers alike. The breakdown of law and order, coupled with the desperation of civilians, creates a volatile and tragic situation. Now, let's delve into the escalating conflict in the Kharkiv region. Recently, Russian forces have unleashed a series of FAB 3000 bombs, marking the third consecutive day of such attacks. The latest strikes targeted Vovchansk and other frontline areas, signaling an intensifying effort to disrupt Ukrainian preparations for a counter-offensive. Russian intelligence reports suggest that Ukrainian forces are massing near Hliboke, preparing for a major assault. Despite several skirmishes, the main offensive has yet to commence. However, the tension is palpable, with Russian defenses bracing for a significant Ukrainian attack aimed at the central and northern sectors of Hliboke. In Vovchansk, Ukrainian forces have cleared substantial gray zones, preparing for multi-directional assaults. Their strategy includes flanking maneuvers from both the left and right, with the primary thrust aimed at recapturing key industrial and medical facilities currently under Russian control. The objective is to create a solid front for a comprehensive offensive. However, Russia's response has been swift and devastating. Following Ukraine's occupation of high-rise buildings in cleared areas, Russian forces launched a barrage of FAB 3000 bombs and Iskander missiles. These strikes have inflicted severe casualties, demonstrating Russia's capacity to deliver precise and overwhelming force. In a notable attack, Russian forces deployed a FAB 3000 bomb against the 36th Marine Brigade, a key unit responsible for river crossing operations. The strike reportedly killed at least 60 soldiers, highlighting the increasing accuracy and lethality of Russian bombardments over successive days. These developments indicate that Russia is not only refining its tactics but also stockpiling these massive bombs in anticipation of Ukraine's counteroffensive. The escalating precision and destructive power of these strikes underscore the formidable challenges Ukraine faces. As Ukraine clears central areas and prepares for further advances, the looming threat of massive Russian bombings casts a long shadow. The strategic use of FAB 3000 bombs suggests that Russia is methodically preparing to thwart Ukraine's plans, making the battlefield increasingly perilous for Ukrainian forces. The cost of this conflict is staggering. In the past week alone, Russian strikes have claimed numerous lives and destroyed critical infrastructure. The Ukrainian forces, despite their best efforts, are struggling to hold their ground. As Ukraine gears up for a potential large-scale offensive, the question remains: can they withstand the onslaught? The signs are ominous. With depleted morale, political instability, and a relentless enemy, Ukraine's path forward looks increasingly bleak. The sustained bombardments have not only inflicted significant casualties but also severely damaged Ukraine's logistical and strategic capabilities. The destruction of supply lines, communication hubs, and key infrastructure has left the Ukrainian forces vulnerable and underprepared for any major counteroffensive. Moreover, the psychological impact on both soldiers and civilians cannot be overstated. Continuous exposure to bombings and the threat of large-scale attacks have eroded the morale of the troops and the resilience of the civilian population. The constant state of fear and uncertainty has taken a heavy toll. In this environment, any attempt at a large-scale offensive by Ukraine is fraught with challenges. The question of whether they can muster the necessary resources, coordination, and morale to push back against a well-prepared and fortified opponent looms large. The upcoming days and weeks will be critical in determining the outcome of this conflict. In conclusion, Ukraine stands at a crossroads. The nation is fraught with internal strife and external threats. The coming days will be crucial, and as Mr. Douglas has often emphasized, the outcome will have far-reaching consequences. Stay tuned as we continue to bring you the latest updates on this unfolding crisis. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.